Blah blah social media inaccuracy etc, same videos yesterday but in reverse. 7 players who are underrated due to social media since 2004. Keep this in mind. Let's roll on. Number 7, Anthony. I'm actually not trolling when I'm saying his name this time, nor am I claiming he's world class. And no, I'm certainly not jumping on the bandwagon now due to his recent form with Betis either. Go check my comments in previous videos, go check my comments on the Greenwood video. I've always rated Anthony to an extent, and while the entire cyber world basically brought into this guy being nothing but a waste of space because of his form and, well, him just being someone who's very easily memeable, and also this shit didn't help either, twat. But as someone who's followed Manchester United very closely over 2 decades, I knew that there was a lot more to Anthony's bad form than just him being bad. Don't forget, he had a flying start when he initially arrived at the club, scoring against Arsenal on his debut, as well as the rocket in the Manchester derby. But as it's been the case for so many players who arrived at United with so much promise, they eventually have the life sucked out of them and begin seemingly phoning it in, only to find a new spring in their step once they leave the club. I don't exactly know why it happens, but I know this is exactly what happens. And no, it's nothing to do with the Premier League being too much or whatever. Anthony Elanga ain't exactly in Uzbekistan right now, mate, but it's more to do with the fundamental structure at Manchester United. You know, the fish and the aquarium thing. Problems which make all involved with the club look worse than they really are. But as is the backwards logic of users of social media, instead of recognizing this as a bigger problem of the institution, we instead like to nitpick, scapegoat, meme, and at times even harass. It's just easier that way, isn't it? Number 6, Xavi Hernandez. Like I said yesterday, not every entry in these lists are overrated or underrated directly because of how they're perceived by social media, or rather morons who people who use social media. In fact, in the case of Xavi, it's as indirect as you can get. While no one really claims he wasn't a top level player or anything, Xavi instead has become underrated due to how little he is rated nowadays when compared to his 2 colleagues in Barca's midfield from back in the day. Cause this is how it went. While Andres Iniesta, due to his exciting style of play, has always gotten the recognition he deserves, it was Sergio Busquets who was considered underrated for the longest of time. However, with the increase in the use of short edits of footballers on Twitter, viral clips of Busquets doing feints and close control to make people look stupid when being pressed have emerged, resulting in even the younger fans realizing how good he was in his prime. So that left one person behind. And yes, both of his midfield colleagues did more eye-catching stuff, but here's the thing not many of these clips capture. You know why Xavi didn't need to do these things all that often? Cause you couldn't get near him to begin with, and that, my friends, is even more impressive. Ask any footballer who's played at the highest level and they'll tell you, you know someone's an elite baller when they always seem to have time and space. And no question, that was Xavi Hernandez to an absolute T. Number 5, Jude Bellingham. Right, so early warning, the stupidity of a couple of these entries here will get me all riled up. It's inevitable. And while I'd usually point in the youth of the average member of football Twitter when attempting to explain the stupidity, here's the odd thing about this entry. It's usually bros that are like 40 and over who don't rate Jude Bellingham. Like, why? Bro, it's legit baffling. I mean, is it cause Jude gets wrongly compared to your hero Zidane? Cause if so, I agree, he's no way near Zidane. But that doesn't make him shit, man, what the fuck? Oh, and by the way, these uncles have somehow taken these mental gymnastics to such a new level that Jude getting a significant number of goals and assists has somehow become a negative trait. Cause you know, stat padding. What in the midlife crisis? I mean, look, congrats for learning what that term means, considering stats probably weren't even invented when you were young enough to use that term without looking at our place, but here's why all this is fucking dumb either way. So first of all, if you're using a player scoring a lot of goals against him, then you're a fucking clown as it is. But you know what, let's play along with this. You really think goals and assists are all he contributes to the team with? My guy, Jude Bellingham is a very rare example of a world-class baller who's nothing more than a pure team player at heart. And that's actually something he does share with Zizou. And like I explained in my Zidane video, that is why Zizou himself didn't pull out those insane tricks as regularly as some people may have wanted him to. And again, while Jude isn't on Zizou's level in terms of flair and excitement, as far as strictly sticking to what his team needs him to do, he's basically the exact same. This guy attacks when he needs to, defends when he needs to, sit back when he needs to, covers significant amount of distance when he needs to, while also doing some of the running others were supposed to do in both directions when he needs to. Like, I think Thierry Henry recently pointed out that during a UCL game he made a run from midfield that Mbappe was supposed to do as a number 9. But here's the thing, he's been doing that shit for like years, mate. And yes, not just going forward. The boy's been covering his teammates defensively too when they were slacking. He's been everywhere he needed to be for his team's benefit at that particular time. And that's cause Jude, even at 21, not only has the footballing intelligence to do that, but also possesses the mentality to apply that intelligence on a game-to-game basis, regardless of any external factors such as form of teammates or level of opposition. And that is also partly why he finds himself in the right positions to score so many vital goals late on. He knows where to be at what time and won't stop getting to those places right up until the final whistle. But you know, because he plays in a position similar to players like Phil Foden, but doesn't produce the eye-catching and clippable highlights as often as they do, he's somehow considered a stat padder. Get the f*** out. Number 4, Roy Keane. Well, in all fairness though, Roy Keane has been underrated since even before the social media era. His hardman persona and intense battles have always overshadowed his true technical brilliance on the pitch. But at the same time, if I were to claim that social media didn't help the cause, I'd be lying through my teeth. Cause remember, one of the more common traits of not necessarily all young people, but those who build another personality for themselves online, is to cast judgments on things without really knowing much about the topic in question. And if you add clips of Kino, whether it's old ones like his fights, sending off tackles, or him telling Ronaldo to f*** off, or new ones of him, well, looking like this, on a platform like Twitter where these cyber macho wet wipes reside, it's inevitable that you'll be previewed to a distorted image of someone like Roy Keane. Because as I've said many times, the truth is that Roy Keane was easily one of the best midfielders in the world for years during his prime. The best short to mid-range passer around, Kino was always as intelligent as anyone around, could help out going forward, could sit back and dictate games, as well as impacting games in ways deemed intangible. He was the ultimate leader, he was the complete leader, meaning that he can lead by intimidation when he felt his voice needed to be weighed in, but he led by example in every side he played in. Number 3, Marcelo. The recently retired, once rapid and relentless radiant runner of Real's three-peaters, Marcelo, much like many footballers during the social media era, has been the victim of having a reputation inadvertently built on a select few mistakes that people can't seem to forget. Though having said that, there's no doubt that Marcelo in his younger days was defensively negligent from time to time. But that's the thing, you see, not only was all this even back then a little over-exaggerated, but the fact that he from about 2014 onwards was the best and probably also the most complete fullback in the world was rarely ever mentioned. Instead, surprise surprise, it's only the easily clippable parts of Marcelo's game that the online world seem to focus on, whether it's the positive ones like the amazing flicks and tricks and runs, or the negative ones like the early defensive errors, as I said. But again, man, while the long bursting bursts or the bonito Brazilian brilliance in his build-up play was certainly more eye-catching, the importance of Marcelo's defensive shifts to the three-peat journey really should not be overlooked. Because with Ronaldo playing in front of him on the left, this man was left with almost the entirety of the defensive responsibilities of that left-hand side in most games, and be it with his insane engine, last-ditch tackles and or clearances, Marcelo in the second part of his career was a defensive stalwart for Real Madrid. Number 2, Gary Neville. Bro, where do I begin? You know what, I shouldn't really even need to. All that actually needs to be said is, there are some people out there who have actually been fooled into thinking Gary Neville was somehow on a similar level to Jamie Carragher. That's it. That should be all for actual football fans. But you know, this is a video circling around people on social media, hence I'll elaborate. So yeah, despite being on another galaxy to his MNF colleague in terms of ability, one parallel GNF does share with the Merchant of Spittsville as far as these entries go though, watch yesterday's video, is that his ability is too misjudged nowadays, primarily because of his own doing. This man seemingly can't go 2 days without putting himself down one way or another, claiming that he was carried all throughout his career, claiming that people like Kyle, Trent and Reece James are on another level, claiming that he wouldn't survive in today's game. With all due respect, mate, what the f*** are you on about? And by the way, those of you who believe horse shit like this, just remember, Gary Neville was the starting right back for what were, in my opinion, the two best single season United sides in the modern era. The 98-99 side and the 06-07 side. Yes, he was the starting right back for two best teams in Europe, nearly a decade apart. You know what that shows? Adaptability. And I'm sure he'd have adapted just fine if he was playing in this era. Well, maybe not in this United team. Man, them are cursed. And in addition to everything else, G-Nev had incredible stamina, hence all the overlaps, read the game as well as any defender around, had extremely underrated tackling, and by the way had a great cross on him too for all the slack he gives himself on his ability on the ball. And bro, I don't care who your teammates are. I don't give a shit if you have Messi and Ronaldo taking it in turns to play in front of you. You were the first choice for one of the best teams in the world across 2 generations. You were the best in your position in the country and one of the top 2 or 3 in the world consistently for well over a decade. And yeah, you've now reduced yourself to be compared to Jamie Carragher. What is world? Number 1, Pele. He played before 2004, he retired before I was born, ergo he doesn't fit the criteria, so he really shouldn't be on here, and I don't wanna hear it. I don't wanna know, cause all I know is the legacy of the greatest there's ever been, the king of football, the creator of the beautiful game, has now been reduced to a fraud who played alongside farmers and stat padded in friendly matches. You clowns really do test my patience. This isn't the first time I'm saying this, and I'm sure it won't be the last, but either do your research or shut the fuck up. And that is that. Agree? Good. Disagree? You're a fucking weapon.